Grand Rising, everyone. Welcome to March 9th on a Sunday in 2025. Yesterday, we spoke quite a bit about the Ankh and what it represents. And I wanted to see if there are questions pertaining to our discussion yesterday. And we also talked about the inherent power that we were given at creation. And then there may be some questions in reference to that. So I'm asking, I suppose, if there are any questions at all concerning what we talked about or anything else. Okay, Ron?
I continue to look at stuff and find information on the Ankh and all we've said and the masculine and feminine part, the part being a womb, the energy, all of that is true. And you keep we keep uncovering things as people study and look at it and what those beliefs are and the energy that it carries. I think uh, in a nutshell, we are the Ankh. We are that energy. We are that the symbol of peace. We are the symbol of life. We are the symbol of destiny. And that is why it has an infinite multiple expressions of energy and of life and what it means. So as you grow and as you mature, uh, it reveals itself more and more to you, just like this journey has to us. We reveal more and more is being revealed to us as we expand our desires to know and understand not only who we are, but now to embrace uh, humanity and move forward in that direction. So uh, I appreciate the journey of the Ankh, but I think it's our journey as well, and not so much this physical symbol that we've uncovered.
Thank you. Ron, if you look at what Ron just said in regards to we are the Ankh, if you put your feet together and stretch your arms out, and your head is primarily pretty much oval shaped, and your arms the outstretched, the crossbar for the Ankh, and your legs together is quite a symbol, a representative of what the Ankh looks like. So I can see that in physical form that we are indeed that. But also I see something else in regards to that too, Ron.
Okay.
Um, um, the um, the Ankh is an energy source, as we spoke of yesterday, and that source of that energy is the sun. Um, I see that the sun is the source of all of the energy, the life energy that we've spoken about over the years. And what I mean by that is that the sun being a ball of gas, uh, but that gas, the sun, the star itself, has life giving characteristics about it. Um, the Nothing grows on Earth, nothing lives on Earth without the sun, and too much of the sun uh, can harm you, especially if you are in the sun um, without water. Um, the sun does not harm melanin. It activates it. The sun actually is Well, before I say that, let me say this. When I say the sun activates melanin, I did some research some time ago on sunblocks in relationship to our melanin, and what I found was um, sunblocks, suntan lotions, all of them are carcinogenic. So it's not the sun that creates the cancer; it's what you put on your body. Um, the other thing that I was about to say is this: that the sun being the source of our energy, um, I do believe that the center of the sun in us is in the pineal gland. Can you see that?
Yes.
Hello?
Say that again, Sage.
I believe that the center of the sun in us is in the pineal gland. It is the pineal gland has the energy of the sun, and it is to us what the sun is to humanity. The pineal gland is. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was saying. What is it, Ron?
Nothing. Just thinking, just mulling it over.
Um, I also believe that we don't have to learn how to control the energy source, the energy that we are. Neither are we to control the source of that energy. I believe the unicity of the pineal gland and the sun is the energy that is necessary to keep everything alive. Therefore, we don't have to learn to control it. We have to learn to trust it. We have been so inundated with principles that are not true or not real. And we have been indoctrinated to believe that everything that came out of the Kushite kingdom is demonic. Those principles we have to be purged of. We have to get out of Egypt so that we can be the energy source for everything in the earth. The reason we are able to talk to plants and urge them to live is because we are that source of energy. And when we are talking to them, it is not the words, it is the energy from our pineal gland that carries the energy to the plants that enhances their growth. The sun itself um, is the major source for trees and plants, etc. But when we talk about talking to a plant and keeping it alive, what are we doing? We are bringing life to the dead or the dying. So if we can give life to a plant, why is it that we can't give life to humanity? Why we can't give life to ourselves? Not embrace the life rather that we are. So I believe when we are at a point in this journey when we make an unwavering decision that we are going to travel this journey by embracing the reality that we are a power source in the earth. And because our power is derived from the sun as humans. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, I have a question. I'm sorry, I yield.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Evelyn. I'll come after you.
Okay, thank you, brother. Pastor Ron, you made a statement about symbols are what's inside of us. So I would like to know your opinion on crystals, minerals, things that countries are fighting for to take control of. Are not the crystals inside of us, just like Ron was talking about the unk that's inside of us? And you were talking about the energy that we give plants. We do believe the concept that we say about energy flows where attention goes. Does that not also apply about the plants that we talk to? That's my question, or questions. Thank you.
Well, you want that to be?
Well, you're more equipped to answer that. All I can think of is the natural minerals and crystals and things are, yeah, make up who we are. Uh, but the pursuit of them by man is for monetary gain. And so yeah, what I was saying is we look at not all religious symbols, of course, but the Ankh in particular, because of its history, the people who are behind it, the Kushites and what their rationale and their reasoning was, and looking at their history, that has a very significant meaning to us. And so as we look at these things, just like we talk about love and kindness and whatnot, you can make a symbol of that if you desire to, but it still describes us. The true power of it is recognizing that it is you, and not just seeing that the symbol itself holds more power than you do. It is you who energizes the symbol uh, because of who you are. So that's what I meant by that. I probably didn't do a good job of explaining it, but and I think I did a poor job of answering your question, but I hope Pastor has a clearer answer.
In reference to the crystals, all crystals, as everything else, has energy. And the marketing of crystals came from two primary things. One is greed, and the other one is a lack of understanding of energy. The energy that's assigned to crystals did not come from a crystal. The energy that's assigned to crystals came from men, a man. I do not believe that crystals releases the energy that marketing says they do. However, I do believe that they have energy and purpose. And if we are going to look at the energy of crystals, it is imperative that we look at the original energy that was attached to that crystal and their purpose in the earth. Right now, a crystal is like a crystal ball, something that you were looking for something to gain from it. And I believe that the actual cell of crystals is a sham, because I do not believe that the ones who are selling these crystals have a clue as to the origin of their powers, or the origin of the energy that they give. Second part, Evelyn, the first part, does that help?
It does, but I know that there's more. And as we talk, I know it will be uncovered. But I'm
Okay,
listening, processing.
okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. What I'm saying about crystals, the bottom line is this. I do not believe that you can go buy a crystal and expect to get divine energy from it simply because you bought it. You cannot buy any divinity at all. If you don't believe that you are divine, how in the world can you believe a crystal is divine? So it is no different than someone making an effort to buy divine energy from you. It's ludicrous. As far as the statement that you made, that is one of George's mantras: energy goes as the attention flows. That is real. Whatever you focus on, it receives energy from you, whether it be a plant or another person. And there are times when people who are close to each other uh, speak the same thing at the same time. And I'm not talking about married folk. I'm just talking about people who just know who knows each other and people who are close. And that happens a lot of times in our teachers meeting as well. And that is because we have focused energy. Our focus is in the same direction for the same purpose, even though we may not see it the same way. The goals are the same. And when we get to the root of the message that's being offered, we see that we are saying the same thing. We're simply adding to it, no different than a limb is added to a tree or a leaf is added to a limb. It's the same tree, same leaf. Uh, they look the same. They are the same with the exception that something was added to it. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes, sir. It does. So it had to be a purpose for crystals to be used for a valid reason back then, and I'm not saying now, but aren't the crystals or the minerals, well, I'll say the crystals that are used, aren't they to activate the energy fields?
I don't think crystals activate the energy field any more than a diamond or any more than anything else that carries energy. Um, I don't want to delve deeper into it, but I further than saying this, that the purchasing of crystals for divine reasons is BS right now, because
I got that.
the ones who are selling them have no idea what it means. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense.
I
Yeah.
mean, it would be just like me selling you my coffee cup and telling you that my cup has the energy to fill you up at breakfast in the morning without you having to eat or drink coffee. That's just what I attach to it. Does that cup have energy? Yes, it does. But what is the purpose of that energy? I just told you what it was. And then you take the cup, you buy the cup, and now you're still hungry. So I've not known anyone who benefited from crystals in the manner that they are said, that the crystals are presented to us as a benefit, as a spiritual benefit, or in a benefit of the energy that it emits. And I feel very strongly about it. And I think you can feel that from the way I'm talking about it, because there are so many people who have been duped into purchasing crystals that was going to make them wealthy, or purchasing crystals that was going to heal their body, purchasing crystals that was going to change a relationship, purchasing crystals so that uh, they would be able to become clairvoyant. All those things. People have been ripped off with these beliefs about what crystals can do and will do.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. And I may very
Well, yeah, it's marketing. I'm sorry, I hear.
go ahead.
Well, I'm just gonna say, yeah, you're right. It's a marketing scam, and yeah, I got what you're saying.
Okay.
But when Ron was talking about the symbols and things that are external and that has been created, it came from us. But I know I'm listening. I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Thank
you.
The difference between what Ron was talking about, because he was talking about the symbol of the Ankh. The difference in that is we are gaining much more understanding of the purpose of the Ankh from the in-depth study that we are doing about the Ankh, but also what's being revealed to us about the Ankh in relationship to energy. Excuse me. And that's a different story about the crystals that are on the market. That's all I'm saying. The Ankh is far more powerful than that.
So, Pastor, based on what Ron said this morning about the Ankh being in us, and you said if we stand with our arms outstretched, that is the symbol of the Ankh. How does that tie into the chakra points that's in the body?
The Ankh, if you take the Ankh and stand it up, and you stand up next to the chakra runs straight up the center of the Ankh. So the power, when we talk about the power of the chakra, the Kundalini, that is primarily attributed to having come out of India, I believe, and the system of energy, whether it is the Ankh or the Kundalini, is the same energy. However, I do think that I do believe everything in me that the Ankh is the older system of the manifestation of an energy source in the earth. I do believe also that the Ankh attracts energy in a different way than the Kundalini. I think it attracts energy in a different way. Yesterday, one of the things that was mentioned in regards to the Ankh and energy is that one of the objects that was used by Tesla to attract energy was shaped like the Ankh. The Kundalini represents the energy that's in you, and it draws. I do believe the Kundalini draws its source from draws its energy rather from the pineal gland. And as I said earlier, I do believe that the pineal gland, sometimes I say pineal, sometimes I say pineal, I don't know which one it is, but you know what I'm talking about. That gland is the center of the sun in us, and the sun is the center in terms of the universe. Does that make sense, Kat?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone want to speak to that? Actually, have any questions about any of what we said?
Yeah, good morning, Pastor. Good morning, everyone. Ron, you started us out, by saying, we are the Ankh. I can, again, feel and sense the power of who we are. But if we look at it in terms of history, and we look at it in terms of the primary sources of, our African heritage, it said from the earliest times that the African viewed the sun as the most important essence in the sky. And when we look at the pineal gland and its relationship, to the spirit of who we are, it speaks about the spirit, that came, through the earth, through the rays of light, heat, and sound, that gives us the opportunity to be able to, again, appreciate not only who we are, but the opportunity to be in oneness, with nature. And so, the point of emphasis that I wanted to relate to, as you say, we are the Ankh, then we can appreciate the Ankh being the first symbol, in terms of the original cross.
Yeah.
But what does that mean when we talk about, the mother, father, child? And I'm just trying to look at it in that spiritual relationship where that's the power that we have, but it also relates to not only the Ankh being the key of life, but it also represents, the importance of water. And I think we've talked about that before in terms of the Nile. So I think that there's a lot more that I'm sure we'll speak about or talk about. But I think your statement about we are the Ankh, we need to see that. And as Pastor mentioned, energy flows as our attention goes. And I think that we are putting a lot of energy, into what we're receiving now. And that's the importance when we speak about the symbols.
Yeah.
We talked about it before. A symbol, what is 1,000 pictures? But I'm sorry, a picture is 1,000 symbols, but a symbol is 1,000 pictures. And so when we look at pictures from the hieroglyphics, it talks about the Medu Neter. And the Medu Neter is that sacred script, that sacred language or linguistics, when we can understand what the words really mean. And so as we, continue on in this journey, we could begin to appreciate what our eyes are seeing, what our ears are hearing, what we're touching, what we're tasting, and what our intuition is. And this is all part of these, the symbols, when we can be able to appreciate how we come to learn from the sun. And so if the sun was a symbol, this is how we learned to read. And so as we begin to appreciate the journey that we're on, I think that is giving us revelations to be able to understand what the Creator is revealing to us, because we have our two physical eyes, but as Pastor mentioned, we all know we got a third eye. And so from the pineal gland, right, we're able to receive from the sun, to be able to receive that light and heat and sound energy, or the vibrations. But we also have 3 ears. And when I say 3 ears, I mean 2 physical ears, but then there's a third ear. And I think that third ear speaks about the importance of what are we really hearing in the spirit. What did Mama say, or Papa say to us, that we heard it in the spirit, not just hearing it in our, just from sound. But I think these are the sacred sayings, the sacred script that we're becoming more aware of in terms of utilizing, in a spiritual way, and not just from a scientific way. So there's some other thoughts that I have about that, but I think in terms of us being able to appreciate, what we're hearing is very instrumental, or very important. So I appreciate you guys letting me share my thoughts. But again, African view the sun as the most important essence in the sky. I'm done.
Thank you, George. You said a lot of stuff there, and I love that. Couple things there. You talk about mom and dad saying something, hearing in the spirit. That is a beautiful example of the vibrations and the rhythms that are in us, and that describes the Ankh to a T, actually. If anything you look at, any definition, anything that you see on the Ankh speaks to life. It speaks of eternity. It speaks of looking at being the repairs of the breach, because the Ankh stands at the point where it's timeless. It is not from the past. It is not from the present. I mean, from the future. It is the here and now. And that's what I see when I look at that energy that we bring together when we have these discussions, and when we do our meditations, whether we're individual or not, we bring all that energy together. Uh, the other thing you said that is very key, and we look at religious symbols, and we sort of don't differentiate from a lot of them, right? The Ankh is not the original cross. The cross took its uh, uh, symbolisms from the Ankh. But remember, one is a symbol of life in eternity. The other one is a symbol of death. So a lot of those religious symbols are, and I don't want to, be critical here and talk about uh, what people believe in, and I don't mean to smash the cross, but it is not what we have been told that it is, or made to believe that it is. And it has no it has no comparison to the except for the shape. But it was shaped that way because there was an Ankh. So those two symbols have nothing in common. One is life and one is death. One has a totally different vibration than the other. So I love everything that George said, but I just felt that rhythm that he spoke to me kind of tied everything together.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, why you apologize?
I kind of got a little carried away, but go ahead.
Thank you. Any questions or comments about that? Um, is it not ironic that as we are speaking concerning the Ankh, we understand very clearly that it is symbolic of life energy, and the cross is symbolic of death. Of putting more terms with the Ankh, the cross represents zero energy, and the cross is the major symbol of Christianity.
Yeah.
That's something to think about. I want to offer a postulate if there are no questions or comments. The I spoke earlier about our having been inundated with things that are not true, and that is the major reason it is so difficult for us to embrace the inherent power that we have, the inherent authority that we have been given, the utilization of the energy that we are. Um, I want to speak for more to that, if I may. How do we get to this place where we are able to embrace this energy, this authority? How is it that we embrace it to the extent that humanity becomes beneficial to humanity immediately and continuously, bringing an end to the abuse that humanity is currently suffering? With all of this power and authority, and knowing that we have it, why are we not using it beyond putting things in the macro? Why are we not using it in terms of shaping the attitude of the environment by what we put in the macro, as opposed to allowing it to flow in the macro and others pick it up because they're in search of something? How do we do that? How do we make it more available, more palatable, um, much easier to embrace in a clearer way. Could it be because we are too protective? We're not trusting enough? What do I mean? And I know I talked about us not trusting who we are earlier in terms of the energy. We have been taught to never allow anyone to get over on you. We have been taught to one up anyone who tries to dominate you in any way whatsoever. These are things that we have been taught. I believe that one of the major reasons is because we don't want to submit subconsciously. And the reason we don't want to submit is because by virtue of what we have been taught, we refuse to be vulnerable. Ron and I was talking yesterday, that was mentioned yesterday. And while we were talking today, the thought of that vulnerability came to me about the idea of being submissive to the energy, to the pineal gland, the energy of it, the wisdom of the energy that is the receiver of the energy from sun/ancestors. Why is it that we are not seemingly able to release our soul to this state of vulnerability? A major purging has to take place if we are to be vulnerable. One of the things that Ron mentioned yesterday was being vulnerable during our procreation. What I mean by that is this: when we are bringing life into existence in a physical way, when the seed and the egg meets, or let me put it in other terms that everybody can receive it. When male and female has an orgasm, they are at the most vulnerable state because nothing in their surroundings matters. When life is being brought into existence, there is such a vulnerability there until everything around you melts away. That's the kind of vulnerability that we have to have for us to be able to trust the energy that we are, to trust the wisdom of the ancestors, to trust the Creator who brought us to this space of understanding, the viability, the reliability, the stability of the sun itself in relation to life in the earth. If there were a physical God anywhere, it would be the sun, because of its purpose of being the source of life. I want you to hear me again. If there was a such thing as physical life, so I don't want you to leave here saying that I said the sun is the God, because that's not what I'm saying. It would be the sun if there was such thing as that. Everything that gives life in the earth is representative, is a manifestation of a spiritual truth. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I suppose the question is, how do we bring ourselves to this state of vulnerability so that we can, or we are able to share with others how we got to this place of experiencing the totality of the power, the energy, the authority that we have and that we are. How do we release this sense of protectiveness that we have? How do we get to this orgasmic space of vulnerability? How do we get to that? One of the ways I believe that we're able to do it is through meditation with the ancestors, being in focus and asking for nothing other than to be purged of anything that makes us vulnerable, to that keeps us from being vulnerable, rather, I'm sorry, be purged of anything that keeps us from being vulnerable to the extent that we are able to function with the authority and power that we were granted and functioning for the benefit of humanity. And as Nick said yesterday, when we function for the benefit of humanity, we're also functioning for ourselves. We're not leaving ourselves out. We are included in that. Any questions or comments about that? Or is that clear? Does it make sense? All of the above.
To me, all of the above.
Thank you. Would anyone like to comment on that? Thank you.
Well, Reb, forgive me for interrupting, but just in looking up the word vulnerable as you speak, by definition, it says in need of special care, support, protection because of age, disability, or risk of abuse or neglect. So to better understand the spiritual concept of vulnerable, we need to look at, just as a suggestion, the definition of vulnerable and deprogram that and just look at the word just by definition of what it means. Thank you.
Read that one more time, George.
In parentheses, it says of a person, and it goes on to say, in need of special care, support, or protection because of age, disability, or risk of abuse or neglect. And it has in quotations, employees must be better trained in how to deal with vulnerable young people. And it gives a lot of list of it, yet if we're looking at vulnerable from a spiritual aspect, we also have to examine what's our interpretation of being vulnerable just by way of definition.
Thank you. What I was looking for and asking for it to be read again was the risk of abuse or neglect. And that's the reason subconsciously it is so difficult for us to be submissive to a state of vulnerability, because we don't want to run the risk of being abused, of being hurt, of being let down, of being ostracized from our social groupings. Those things and others, of course, are reasons why why it's so difficult for us to open that door of being vulnerable. Now, as for when we do become vulnerable, we understand that all the support, all the care, and everything else that we need for our protection and for our subsistence is already in us. And when we trust it to that extent, then we are not concerned about being abused, neglected, taken advantage of. Does that make sense? Audrey? I thought you were saying something. Does that make sense, guys?
It
Well,
does.
Reb, oh, my bad. Go ahead, Ron.
Go ahead, George. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Another definition that I just identify with more than the first one, being open to potential harm or damage, either physically or emotionally.
That's good. Yeah.
And I think that's when you're vulnerable, more than opinionated, you're looked at as weak. So if we can just explore, just deprogram that, there's strength in being weak because you don't know everything, or at least I don't know everything. And in order to receive a lesson, being that I don't know everything, if I don't know how to drive a stick shift, I'm weak. I got to listen to someone, and I got to follow their instructions of how to develop that rhythm between clutch, gas pedal, brake, how to operate on the hill going up or down. So I look at vulnerable in the physical way of you expose yourself. You're weak, you don't know anything, and that's it right there. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. And that's one of the things we have been abused so much emotionally until we were in a state of fright or discomfort when it comes to the idea that even the subject of becoming vulnerable, open ourselves up.
Yeah.
And we can see that prevalent in relationships where people have been hurt or damaged in relationships are not as quick to open themselves up in the way that they did prior to them having been damaged. So that is the same principle that I'm talking about. We have to move beyond our earth consciousness when it comes to vulnerability and embrace the strength of spirituality, because when we are spiritual, when we when we are embracing the spiritual essence of our being, then vulnerability does become a strength as opposed to a weakness. Um, there are no weaknesses in your spiritual essence. So everything that we sacrifice or everything that we are purged of that stands in the way of us being more accepting of the energy that we are, with the risk that said to be involved, because they're not there spiritually. The more accessible the more aware our authority becomes to us. Comments, question?
I think George's second definition hit it on the head, and I love the way you've explained it here. There's one other word that I want to discuss, though, put in this definition, if you will, and that is intimacy. vulnerability should lead to intimacy. The scripture says, and Adam knew his wife. That says a lot, and that's something we kind of ignore. I noticed something in the Bible that kind of got us to this place to talk about vulnerability. Uh, it talks about God kept calling Abraham father. You will be the father. You will be your descendants. Jesus kept talking about the father, the father, the father. Uh, when we think of it in uh, non-spiritual terms, you see father as a masculine figure that stands alone, a man. But if you think about it spiritually, a father is father, mother. You cannot become father without being attached to the feminine. Think about that. You cannot be father without being attached to the feminine. So when you call somebody a father, you're talking about a level of intimacy. You're talking about femininity as much as you're talking about masculinity, because he's just a man until he becomes a father. He's just a man until he attaches himself to femininity. And then there's always a womb. So if you are a father, you are, and I'm talking spiritually here, you are not only feminine, but you have a womb. There is a womb attached. So, looking at the intimacy and what George described, uh, I look. If I use myself as an example, we have been on this journey long enough, uh, where I trust who we are and what we're doing. I see it. I feel it. It's in me, and uh, that vulnerability is still the human side of me still may fight this. I'm not going to say and tell you I'm this and I'm that. I still definitely have many struggles, but I'm also at the point where I trust what we do, and trust is what brings you to the place of vulnerability. Vulnerability says that this has not harmed me in any way. In fact, it has enhanced my life, and I can see the journey that I've taken and the changes of my or things that I battled with. So I trust it and I become vulnerable because now I take my defenses down. I take away my guard and I let you in because I trust you. The feminine aspect of me let you in. The masculine aspect of me embraces it. So as we talk about the spiritual concept, and vulnerable may not be the right word, I don't know, but it's not only talking about a transformation of you, but a transformation of the energy that you are and that environment around you. So it just keeps going, I guess.
Ron, you said something very interesting that came to me when you spoke of Abraham and the masculine and feminine energy. You have to have that before you can be a father, before you can be a progenitor, because mother speaks to the origin of something. It is a progenitor of something. And what I saw when you said that is um, when it speaks of father Abram, right?
Yes.
Is speaking to one who is not aware of its inherent authority, not aware of its spiritual essence. However, when it's Abraham, the spiritual has been added to it. So that's when I say that Abram is the progenitor or the beginning of us becoming aware of our spiritual essence, the authority and power. When we that results in us embracing the awareness of spirituality. It starts out as we are in religion or non-religion. And there is something in us that doesn't allow us to rest because there is more. And the more we don't understand, we don't know how to articulate it. We just know it's more. And that was and is our journey, the more, searching for more.
Yeah.
And that is when the hey, meaning that when we became spiritual aware of our true essence of being Elohim, our true essence of being loving kindness, our true essence of being an extension of the Kemetic Kushite priesthood. When we saw ourselves as having within us the center of the sun, as the sun is to the universe, that life energy that flows through every cell in our body. When we embrace that, that's what it meant by Abraham. When the hay is at, that's what is meant by that. So when we are talking about this with Abraham, we're not talking about proper names. We are talking about realistic concepts. We're talking about spiritual concepts. And these spiritual concepts speak to where we were as well as where we are now. Does that make sense? Is that in line with what you were talking about? I should
Sure. Definitely. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. George?
Yeah, Ron, when you spoke about, the father, mother,
Mhm.
again, I go back to, when you spoke of the, we are the Ankh. I like to look at it for a moment in terms of the spiritual vibrations and essence of numbers. When we
Okay.
spoke about the oval of the Ankh being the circle, I like to read this. It says that the spiritual meaning of zero is a circle where creative potential exists. Zero is a perfect circle with a vortex of power at its center.
Mm.
Zero is a void where ideas circulate and nothing is yet concrete. It's the form and spiritual essence of the number zero is a womb.
Mm.
It represents the vast openness of the cosmos where the endless energy, life forms, and realities will one day be discovered. The number zero also represents the spiritual meaning and nature of continuous flow. It says zero is a feminine vibration, open and receptive. That's the oval of the Ankh. But when we speak of it in terms of the staff, or we speak of it in terms of the masculine, and you mentioned the number one, and the spiritual meaning of one is a strong, assertive symbol of individuality, the beginning of self-discovery and self-empowerment. One is the spiritual essence of singularity, seeking, reaching, and exploring to define self. But the form of the number one is perfectly straight like an arrow, and one represents the spiritual aspects and potential of the need to know self and the power within. Ultimately, the objective is to be one with the higher self, and one is the male vibration focusing energy outwards. So I just thought that those two numbers, when you spoke of the Ankh, as far as the number one, but looking at the zero in terms of symbols. So I just wanted to share those thoughts in reference to our conversation today when you talk about we are the Ankh. And that's
Yeah, that's beautiful, George. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sums it up. Thank you
The-
for
I,
adding
I
that.
really,
Uh,
I really like that as well, George, because when you talk about the potential, that explains the power of the Ankh, but it also explains the power of masculine and feminine energy.
Yeah.
It takes both of them to fulfill that potential.
the when you talked about zero being a void where ideas circulate and nothing is concrete. But then when you add that power of the one, the aspect of needing to know self and the power within oneself, you add those two things together, that's the vulnerability that we've been talking about. One has to be vulnerable to the other in order to create and know the essence of each other. In other words, it's only when I make myself vulnerable and understand that I need that aspect of masculine energy. Although I have both, and you have both as a male, but when I understand the importance that those two aspects need to be balanced within me, and if I don't make myself vulnerable enough to know that, then I continue to function isolated as me, myself, and I, as a separate being, always looking for who I am, but never finding it. But once I understand that it takes both of those aspects in balanced harmony to exist, that's the vulnerability of putting myself where I am open to all of the strength, all of the power that the universe gives me as a unified essence, if you will, and for lack of a better word, as a whole being. I'm not just one or the other. I'm both, and I'm all, and I'm everything, which means I have access to all and to everything, whether it's power, whether it's strength, whatever it is. And I know I'm wandering there at the end, but your example, George, was it just really struck something within me, which just opened everything up to another level. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara.
Sure.
And one of my mantra sounds, or my chants is, I am the one, you are the one, we are the one. Let's make a difference. And that's just something that I say to myself, in my meditations. Thank you again, Barbara, for letting me share. Thank you, everybody. I'm done.
Yeah. I like that. I was speaking with someone yesterday, and I said to them, when I'm teaching, I am the she. I feel the femininity there. And it ties in totally with what George said and what Barbara received from that. The whole time that I'm teaching, I'm not talking about a man and a woman. I'm talking about femininity and masculinity. When I'm teaching, I am feminine. I'm birthing something. And when you are receiving it, that becomes a seed to you. And how you process it means that you are birthing something. However, that does not work very well if we see ourselves as being a man or a woman. If we cannot separate the reality of what masculinity is versus what a man is, what femininity is versus what a woman is, if we cannot separate the labels that have been put on us in this regard, in terms of man, woman, physically, we will not be able to be that spiritual womb and that spiritual seed by virtue of our having something to offer through our teachings and through receiving what's being taught. It is no coincidence that the word woman comes from womb, man. the man with the womb. The entity, the masculinity and the femininity are one. And when we are able to make that distinction between a physical man, a physical woman, and a spiritual, a masculine entity and a feminine entity, if we are not able to do that, then we will never get to a state of vulnerability where we can embrace the true essence of our being. And one of the difficulties with that is because of what we've been taught. We have been taught that Adam was a man, given a proper name, when that could not be further from the truth. That is one of the most deceptive principles that we have ever been taught. And that is the foundation of the chaos that Christianity offers. That is the foundation of the chaos that Islam offers. That is the foundation of the chaos that Judaism offers. That is not a proper name. It is talking about a spiritual entity. When we can get past that, we will no longer see men and women. We see masculinity. We see energy, period. And when I say see energy, I'm talking about the experience that we have as we are teaching and receiving. I'm sitting there listening at what George and Barbara are saying, and what I'm seeing is both of them are speaking from a womb, and at the same time planting a seed in my womb for me to be able to hopefully articulate what I have received from the both of them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And my desire is for all of us to be in that space where we don't find it difficult to be both womb and seed interchangeably, because that's the essence. And the reason I say interchangeably is because it's more difficult for us to, I think anyway, it's more difficult for us to embrace what it really speaks to. What it really speaks to is being androgynous, being both male and female, being both being both masculine and feminine at the same time, without any ability to be separate from each other. There is no separation between masculinity and femininity, and I believe the way the principle was described by George and expounded upon by Barbara speaks totally to that reality, that we are always um, one. And the Aramaic calls it a womb, but this principle was was understood long before Aramaic was a language at all, because the Aramaic language has only been in the earth for approximately 2,000 years, a little over 2,000 years. This principle has been a principle of indigenous people forever and a day. Thank you. I'm done. Questions or comments about anything that has been said or that has come to you since we've been talking, or whatever? Doesn't matter. Okay.
So, Rev, this is Charles.
Uh-huh.
So, when y'all were talking about the numbers, and what came to my mind when George had talked about it, that zero, it's just like the woman room. So no other number can come before it. That zero have to be there.
I got you.
You
So-
understand what I'm saying?
Yes, nothing
Huh?
can exist without that zero, because the zero is the womb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. I see that, Charles. Great observation. Thank you. Anyone else? Can't hear you, Audrey. Not yet. Still
Oh.
can't hear you.
What about now?
Yes, we hear you.
I have a question about when you were saying that the pineal gland is to us as the sun is to us physically. Can you elaborate on that a little more?
What I'm saying, when I say that, what I'm saying is that as the sun is a physical representation of life energy, the pineal gland, the light in the pineal gland is a manifestation of life energy within us, within these physical bodies, meaning that our unicity with our connection with this body, because we're not going to be here always, but our connection to this body is made through the pineal gland, the light that's in the pineal gland, because it is the source of spiritual energy, spiritual life that uses this body as a vehicle. It is what keeps it alive. Does that make sense? Just as the sun keeps everything in the earth alive.
Okay, so, all right, I see. But also I was reading in the Spirituality Before Religion. It was talking about that sinus in the brain where between the hippocampus and the other gland and the pineal right there.
Mhm.
It was saying something about that is the temple. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
When it talks about that being the temple, it is symbolic of the house of our spiritual essence. It houses our spiritual essence. For example, the word Pharaoh means great house. And it does not mean well, the way Pharaoh came into existence is that the place where the Pharaoh lived was a huge structure, and it became known as the great house from the word Pharaoh. However, the spiritual essence of that was the reason the name morphed from being king, being called king, to Pharaoh, or the house was even referred to as Pharaoh, is because the one who sat in that position physically was a spiritual representation of the authority of the whole nation, and the whole nation lived within the confines of the house, the spiritual house that was being led by the one who sat at the helm, who was seen as a physical being, but represented the spiritual essence of the divine. And so when we look at that and Trent, and we look at that in regards to the uh, uh, um, structures in our brain, we're talking about a representation of a manifestation, rather, of what is outwardly seen and structurally in that big house and the Pharaoh, or the person who sits on that throne. So when we look at it with us, it is saying that we are the place where all of humanity lives, meaning that all of humanity is one, and the divinity of humanity is the thread that makes all of humanity one, that speaks to the unicity of humanity, because of the unicity of the spiritual, and that light in the gland represents that spiritual, and the house represents that where that spiritual lives, or where it functions. I'm sound like I'm rambling, feel like I'm rambling anyway, but I know what I'm trying to say. If anybody can help me, I'd appreciate it. Does that help, Audrey? Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Well, I can see it symbolically, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And the reality of that symbol, see the glands themselves are simply physical manifestations of spiritual truths. The sun itself is a spiritual manifestation of a spiritual truth. It's a star, but it's a physical manifestation of a physical truth. There is no light without the sun. Is that not what we say? Is that not what we know? There is no light without the sun. If the earth does not get the sun, it doesn't live, and you don't have sunlight, right? So if there is no light without the sun, then the sun becomes a physical manifestation of enlightenment, as is the light within the pineal gland. It becomes a physical manifestation of enlightenment. And those little, what those things are called that the Jews wear, the males?
Yarmulke.
Yama. Yeah, the reason that they are worn is what? To keep the light in, isn't it? So the light won't escape. So these are religious symbols that have no real meaning whatsoever. And that is one of the reasons that women wore hats to church, because they had to cover their hair. And so that makes no sense either. All I'm saying is that when we look at the spiritual essence of what these representations are, then it makes a difference in how we function in the earth. Our heart, when we talk about the heart, physically it is something that pumps blood, that it receives from the lungs. The heart, when we talk about the heart spiritually, it is not seen as being in the center left of the chest. It's seen being in the solar plex, because the place of the heart is where compassion is. It's where empathy lives. Those kinds of things. So the spiritual manifestation of that truth of the heart is something that lives in the solar plex, as opposed to being the physical thing that we call the heart, and that we see as being a pump that keeps us alive, when in essence, really, the flowing of the blood through the lungs is what keeps us alive. Without that, we dead. But anyway, I won't get into that. I hope I'm making sense, Audrey. That's all. George?
Yeah, I was just gonna respond, Artie, when you spoke of the nasal passage and that olfactory bulb, in terms of the nostrils, there's a term that I've called the synctite. And the synctite, they say, basically is used to describe the deepest and set sanctuaries of the human temple, but it also corresponds to the sixth chakra. And so in our appreciation of how wonderful and marvelous we are made, again, it all ties into that sacredness when we talk about symbols. And I think one of the aspects of our ancestors where they looked at the symbol of the owl, and with the symbol of an owl, it refers to the wisdom. It refers to how our ancestors looked at the owl, but it was more in terms of appreciating the senses, in terms of our six senses. But at the same time, again, it just gave more of a connection that was like the G spot of the brain where we talk about that nasal passageway. So when we talk about the nose in terms of the two physical openings, but the third aspect of that spiritual intuition where we have three nostrils. But I mean, I think that we can go on more and look at it in terms of the power of the nasal passage when it refers to the owl, because it talks about the 13th letter in the alphabet when we look at symbols, but it refers to the Ma, or it refers to the mother. So, I mean, there's more to it, but at the same time, in symbols, it talks about the Egyptian symbol, the Greek, and the Latin. But in the meantime, that nasal passage is really what they call the centite, which is a part of the the metal netter or the hieroglyphics. But hopefully I didn't confuse you more, but that was something I just kind of read across before. I'm done.
No, you just raised more questions.
My
In terms of my curiosity, and that's really interesting. But the Meadow Netter, that's the hieroglyphics, the symbols, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So it's a symbol of, there is a symbol for that particular passage.
Yeah, well, when we talk about the owl, for an example, our ancestors really looked at the owl and studied it in reference to its significance. And we know what the owl characteristics are, you know what I mean? And if not, that's something we can talk about. But I think it's important that it spoke about the sacred wisdom, the owl being able to see at night, the owl being able to turn its head 360 degrees. You know what I mean? And just the importance of, again, wisdom. And so that helps us to be able to see it not in our natural sense, but seeing it in the spiritual, if that resonates.
Yeah,
I'm done.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it does.
I thank you for your comments and questions. And I agree with Audrey, did raise a lot of questions that's going to probably send me down a rabbit hole later on. But I'll be a willing traveler.
Apology.
I think we're at a good place to pause today. A lot has been said, and I'm sure that a lot of questions has been raised, and some you may not be able to put into words. But if you are able to formulate them later on, please make a note of them so that we can further our discussion and get in this understanding about the true essence of our spiritual nature. So if there are no questions or comments at this juncture, I want to bid you a farewell for today and see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock. That's it. Be well, my friends. Love you much.
Take care, family.
Love y'all too.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
See y'all later.